Mhm. Testing, testing, one, two, three, testing. Hello, hello, hello. Hey, everybody, Laurel Ann Stark here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to talk about some of the mental health reasons behind why people don't launch, why they don't market, why they don't start their businesses, and just kind of like do some myth busting and normalize some of the things that I have personally experienced, as well as seen my clients experience as they go through the process of marketing their businesses. So, oftentimes, mental health stuff has this stigma like you have to be sort of in like a mental health ward or something like that in order to be experiencing mental health issues. And that's not necessarily the case. There's like mental illness, which is definitely, a medical sort of issue. And then there's like mental health stuff. And like everybody can experience mental health stuff. So I just want to clarify what I'm talking about before I, talk about it for a super long time. So whether you have like a mental illness that you've been diagnosed with, or you're just like a person who's been, I don't know, in isolation in a pandemic for 8 weeks, you could be experiencing some mental health stuff. And this could be impacting your business. And I wanted to talk about what that could look like and just kind of, like I said, normalize it. Plus, like, who am I kidding? We got nothing to do. We're just going to chill in the video here for a while. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to bring up is the notion of isolation. So in the Rose Report, which is a report on female entrepreneurship in the United Kingdom, it was identified that the top 3 barriers to female entrepreneurship include isolation. And the reason that isolation is bad, according to the Rose Report, is because it gives you lack of access to social capital. So what that means is you don't know a lot of dudes at the country club, or people that could write you big fat checks, or people that could refer you. And of course, that's going to compromise your ability to succeed in your business. But when we look at that from a mental health perspective, being isolated, as I'm sure you all know, being isolated at home, working from home, that it takes a toll on your mental health in a couple different ways. So first of all, we are still animals, we're mammals, even though we have these fancy cell phones and we're super sophisticated, and we have a cerebral cortex and the capacity for logical thinking and all of these things. But we are still, at the end of the day, mammals and animals. So when we don't have exposure to and contact with other human beings, it does actually make us start to feel sad. It makes us start to feel anxious, et cetera, et cetera. So actually, human contact is really important from just like a basic survival level. We're social creatures, like I said. Now, how this can play out in your business, in that a lot of times when you're first like launching your offer or you're marketing your offer, you need a little bit of support and encouragement, right? Everybody needs that. Like, hey, you can do it. Here's a gold star. I think that's a great idea. And not everybody, especially people who are starting businesses, has someone that they can talk to about this stuff. They don't want to burden their partner. Oftentimes, like, their partner or best friend may not be self-employed, so may not be able to sort of identify with some of the struggles that happen. So being isolated with your idea or your business and not having anyone to talk to about it, not getting any place to have feedback or being able to talk it out, it really can create a situation where you've just got all these ideas kind of rolling around in your head, and you're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what's a good idea anymore. I don't know what's a bad idea anymore. And it's because we've lost complete perspective. So isolation, in terms of how it plays out in a mental health perspective, of course, is bad for you. But in terms of preventing you from succeeding in your business and marketing yourself, is like, it's always good to get a second set of eyes, when you're writing something down, or you're sending out an email newsletter, or you have an offer or something like that. Just somebody to point out where you're missing a comma, you use the wrong version of the word there, or your, and to let you know what their perception is of it. So this is one of the top 3 ones that I see, and it informs the rest of the other ways that mental health stuff can play out in terms of marketing. So just trying to go it alone. And there's like this big like myth with entrepreneurs that we're like these heroes that just are like leading the way all the time, out in the forefront by ourselves. And to some extent that's true, but also it's not a sustainable way to operate. That's why there's things like coaches and peer-to-peer support groups. And there are things like networking groups and co-working groups, et cetera. So that way it brings people who typically work at home alone together so they can talk about stuff. I just had a fantastic session with a colleague yesterday where we swapped advice, and we have set each other up so that way we can do that on an ongoing basis, just so we can talk stuff out, problem solve, get another set of eyes and perspectives. And the most successful entrepreneurs and business people typically do have a built-in support system, so that way they can consistently understand that isolation isn't an effective way to go about things, and start to leverage their networks and use other people to help them just talk things out, get perspective, et cetera, et cetera. It's an invaluable thing. So this is how the sort of mental health implication of isolation can play out and undercut your success in business. We're not meant to do things alone. So if you've been doing things alone the whole time, find someone to talk to, grab them. If you need to trade services, trade time blocks. If you need to pay someone, if you need to, call a phone line, whatever you need to do, grab someone. I guarantee you will have a better time with your offer, with, whatever problem it is that you're trying to work through, if you talk it out with somebody. So don't try to do it alone. Get that support, get that feedback, talk it out. So isolation, that's the first one I wanted to talk about. The second one is imposter syndrome. So for those of you who don't know what it is, you're lucky. Imposter syndrome is this notion that and it typically affects really, really high achievers. And what it is this notion that if people knew who I really was, that I wouldn't have they wouldn't let me do this kind of work because I don't have enough credentials. I am not qualified. And what's crazy is about these particular types of people is that often they have some of the most, hugest piles of credentials that I've ever seen. The people who are the most credentialed tend to have this happen to them, where their brain just tells them that they're not good enough in this very specific way. And imposter syndrome, it's really common in women as well. And what's interesting is that isolation can help exacerbate this, right? Because you don't get that additional perspective that actually you are super qualified. It's always nice to have someone remind you, actually, you do have this degree from wherever, or you did have this lived experience that is valuable. And you do have proven capabilities here and there. So again, kind of tracing that back to the isolation, which is the main sort of issue that I see underpinning reasons why people don't succeed in business and in marketing, especially, in a pandemic when they're by themselves, is not having someone to be able to remind you of who you are, what you're capable of, etc. Also, I just want to say as well, a couple things around imposter syndrome is that lived experience is absolutely valuable. It is not, you don't necessarily need credentials for everything, I guess is the best way to say it. So, but certainly if you're a doctor, or if you are, going to pull people's teeth out, or you're a veterinarian or something like that, and there's, a high risk of hurting someone or something, you want to have credentials. So make no mistake, I'm not saying that you should go out there and practice weird medicine or anything like that. I'm just saying for unregulated industries, for things like coaching, etc., there is a million different ways to get certified, and there's a million different ways to approach it. And you don't always need to have this big giant certificate. And often lived experience is just as valuable. Practical experience is just as valuable. And just to prove my point, for those of you that don't know, I do not have a university education. I am a high school educated individual. I got my high school education one semester later than my peers. Barely made it through, honestly. I did upgrade later on and go into university, and I dropped out after 8 classes. So I'm a university dropout with an anarchy tattoo. I got to tell you that. I've been self-employed for 17 years, and I'm self-taught. And everything that I teach and everything that I help my clients with is stuff that I've, learned on my own, practiced in my business, completely screwed up about 1 million times on my own brand, and then gone ahead and implemented as soon as I saw that it had results for my clients. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because credentials are also a kind of a privileged situation. You need to have a lot of time and money to go to a post-secondary education to get credentials. So if you're experiencing imposter syndrome about needing more credentials, what I want to say to you is do you have the proven ability to deliver the results that you say you're going to deliver? And can you get someone to put that in writing? And can you look at that every single time you start to feel like you don't have enough qualifications, or that you're not ready, or that you don't deserve this, or you need to go get more certification? Because I see people get stuck in this loop of needing consistent credibility. They need more certificates. They need more courses. They need more letters after their names. And what happens is they never actually launch. And this can be traced to the third sort of mental health indicator that I see show up that impedes people from business success and impedes their ability to market themselves effectively. And that third thing is around the sort of anxiety, procrastination, perfectionism in that bucket. And so what this often looks like is people who are paralyzed feel really, really anxious about putting themselves out there. And so what happens is that they just don't ever put themselves out there. And a lot of this has to do with fear of looking silly, fear of success. There's a lot of fear around the inability to pull the trigger, and the inability to go out there and be seen and make mistakes and be a flawed human being, because there is a risk of being rejected, right? There is a risk of being mocked. There is a risk of, putting your offer out there and having crickets just happen, and I have to say that it's, I think a lot of it stems from this sort of fear of failure, fear of looking stupid, which is great. but we can't really avoid it, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're self-employed. You need to suck at something before you become good at something. So I always say that to my clients, like, give yourself permission to suck, do that crappy first draft. And often that seems to be some sort of wormhole that people can kind of work through. Is like, it doesn't need to be perfect. Let's just let it be really, really bad. Let's start with something awful. And I was working on a book for myself for a really long time, and I've just deferred it because I'm working on a technology platform now. That's a whole other story. But my point is that the only way I could ever write is if I told myself I was going to write the worst version of this book that had ever been written. And once I gave myself permission to suck, then I had the ability to actually take action. So anxiety coming from perfectionism and paralysis is another reason why people don't actually launch. So I want to just give you this little notion, is that 80% perfect is better than perfect, because perfect doesn't happen. So if you can sort of reorient yourself to the notion of getting at 80% good enough and launching at that point, then what will happen is the launch will generate feedback, which will inform your next steps. So what happens often is that people will launch and they'll think that their offer is going to be amazing and they get crickets, or they launch something they think that isn't going to work and they get a huge response, because people are strange, and this is part art, part science. And it's really important to kind of allow in your process for feedback from your audience, feedback from the people you serve, in order to iterate, in order to improve, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of coming at it from that place of like, this has to be perfect before I launch, coming at it from a place of 80% and done is better than not done, and allowing for iterative improvement is kind of a way to make like tiny little baby steps and progress towards your goals, as opposed to like waiting until it's perfect to launch, because then you just never launch. So to recap, for those just joining, we are talking about some of the mental health indications behind why people don't market themselves. We are looking at reasons like isolation, anxiety, imposter syndrome, and they are super, super common, especially for self-employed people. So for those of you just tuning in, thank you for watching. My name is Laurel Ann Stark, and one of the things that has really floated my boat lately in terms of talking about mental health awareness and self-employment is just to know that self-employed people have 3 times higher likelihood of developing mental health concerns than your average bear. So this is also sort of a public service announcement for those of you that don't know that. There was a study done out of Berkeley in 2015 and a further one that happened here in Canada that showed that self-employed people do have higher mental health issues, not necessarily mental illness, but mental health, like obstacles to positive mental health. So if you found this valuable, please hit the like button. I would love to hear you share any of your experiences around mental health stuff in the comments below, whether it has impeded you from marketing or launching or anything like that, because we need to reduce the stigma. Mental health is just as important as physical health. During this COVID-19 self-isolation pandemic, I think a lot of people are experiencing mental health stuff, and it's important to talk about it. And talk about how it's affecting us, and talk about how we can proactively manage our mental health in order to ensure that we're still able to do the things that we need to do in order to pay the bills, right? So my name is Laurel Ann Stark. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you are looking for support with launching your own online offer, I am doing the Create Your Offer in 7 Days program. Again, we're doing it again in May. It's starting May 20th, and by May 27th, you will pop out with your offer launched. If you want more details about that, go to laurelanstark.com. You can either book a call with me and we can chat one-on-one and see if it's a good fit for you, or you can get full details on my website about the price, the schedule, what's involved, what you get, what you don't get, who it's for, etc. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.